All right, friends, welcome. Let's get started. Um, we put the housekeeping notes here, so I won't read through them today, but just a reminder that recordings will be available after the fact. So if you miss anything or if you're furiously taking notes, feel free to just pause and listen and be present. And then please just fill out the survey at the end. That has helped us make things better each time and understand what you're looking for. So welcome to our fourth webinar here. We are now 4 weeks into new life as we know it, and really appreciate you coming back. Before we get started, I did just want to say a huge thank you. Over the last week, especially as things have really picked up in New York from a danger perspective, just got a lot of notes from folks here after last week checking on me, checking on the team. And as far as I know, we're all pretty well and healthy. So thank you for that. I'm calling from New York City, as some of you know. Two things I wanted to share about life in New York right now that you might find interesting. Or one, the birds are actually louder than they've ever been. Springtime, that's part of it. Part of it is that there just aren't other sounds in the city. There's no cars, there's no bars and restaurants. And so New York's actually alive with chirping birds everywhere you go, which is totally new for all of us city folks. And the second thing that I found really moving that maybe is happening where you are is that at 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock is the time that most hospital workers change shifts. So doctors and nurses will clock out, and the next 12-hour shift will clock in. And every day at 7 o'clock p.m. now, you just hear applause and banging pots and pans out every apartment window, and horns honking for those few people that are driving as a celebration of all the medical workers here. So just wanted to share that, and thank you again for all of the well wishes for our whole team. And I hope you guys are all doing well. I know a lot of folks are stuck at home, and now that we're in fact at week 3 or 4 of this, you're learning how to cut your kids' hair and not just homeschooling and all these other things. So just a big shout out to all of you that are dealing with kids, with aging parents, with relatives you're taking care of, navigating life with your spouse in a small space. It's a lot. So welcome, and hopefully this is a good, easy hour for you. Today's agenda, we've made a couple of shifts based on your feedback. So we'll do some intros, talk about the CARES Act, the session, what that means for gift types. We'll talk about making the internal case on planned giving, which has been hard for some folks. We'll share a whole lot of new ideas. We have amazing ideas, not from us, but from the community. And then we'll do next steps in Q&A. Just as a reminder, my name is Patrick Schmitt. I'm the co-founder of FreeWill, alongside my wonderful, brilliant co-founder, Jenny Shah. My background before getting into planned giving, getting FreeWill, is I ran email fundraising for President Obama for a few years and worked at change.org. So some interesting experience. Jenny is the smarter, more interesting, better looking one of the two of us. But also, I get to talk to you guys every week, but our team is amazing. And normally we're all piled together in a group in New York City, 55 folks. Oprah called FreeWill one of the top ways to make a serious difference. We're nearing $1.3 billion in committed requests. So I know a lot of the team is listening, and we're super proud of you and really grateful for you. Let's talk about how your week is going. So we asked folks what they were worried about this week. 41% said not being able to hit goals, which is a bit of an increase from last week. 33% say the health and safety of coworkers. 41% said health and safety of donors. 27% said potential layoffs or losing my job. Talk more about that in a bit. And then 21% said all the above. We also asked people how they're feeling. And this is a steady trend downwards. So 41% are anxious, which is still a lot. And it's totally normal and reasonable to feel anxious. But that number was in the 60s when we started. And you can see it trending downwards as people are moving to action. 47% are eager and energized. 32% are happy. 11% are lonely or isolated, which also makes sense. 10% are confused. This is down a bit from last week. But 15% are sad, and this is up from last week. As this becomes less sudden and more just a tragedy, I think we're all adjusting to that. So that makes sense. Feedback from last week, overall, almost 80% of people rated it a 5 out of 5, and this was the highest rated webinar we've had so far. We try to take all of your feedback and put it into action so that we can make things better each week. So that was really nice to see. Here's a couple of things that you said went well last week. The projections were really helpful for events. Continuing surfacing cool ideas from the audience. We've tried to double down on that this week, and you'll see a lot later. The templates and resources, people keep putting them into practice, not just reading them, but using them, getting real results. And so someone told us how much work they save us, which is great. And then someone else said, thank you for moving Patrick out of the black room and into the color coordinated library. So you're welcome for that. Things we can do better. A couple of things stood out this week. Someone said last week was so much content and it went by really fast as compared to some of the previous weeks. So we tried to dial it back a little bit this week as well. This is an important point. Last week I talked about how canceling galas may save a lot of money and you may actually end up on top, but for some people that struck the wrong chord and the event planners have worked really hard on that. And so let me apologize for that if you've worked really hard on a gala that you were really excited about putting on, but just worth naming that these frustrations are real. And so I see all the work that you've put in. And then we also said the second half of the webinar is the most helpful, so breathing through the first half is really helpful. So we tried to do that this time and cut a whole bunch of slides out so we can get right to tips starting now, actually starting in a minute. So people have continually joined what we call free yoga, which is my colleague Megan, who's really special and wonderful, teaches yoga at 8:30 on Tuesdays and 4:30 on Friday afternoons. Feel free to sign up in the survey later if you want to join. And people have given Megan rave reviews. Okay, diving into the real stuff. So we've skipped through the first half pretty quickly today. The CARES Act, most of you know this, so I'll recap this quickly and then get to how it affects different types of giving. So first, the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses and nonprofits will be forgivable loans. We'll talk about that in a second. As you know, $1,200 per adult making $75,000 or less. This is a sliding scale up to 100K. So if you made $90,000 last year, you'll get a portion of that, and so on and so forth. There's a new $300 quote unquote above the line deduction for all Americans, and a change in the adjusted gross income maximum that you can deduct from 60 to 100%. And there's a suspension of RMDs, or required minimum distributions, from IRA accounts, which will affect QCD giving. And we'll talk about that in a bit. So first, Paycheck Protection Program. Please apply for it if you have fewer than 500 employees. Jenny, my wonderful co-founder, has made about a dozen updates over the last week on the how-to guide to apply for these resources. It's linked to the resources page. It includes things like what banks you can use and what banks you can't, what the requirements are, what you should be preparing. This whole thing is sort of a mess right now. And so we tried to do our best to make it as clear and easy as possible. It may be a few weeks before you're able to apply, but you really want to get started and get in line at your bank now. Second point, this is a grant or a loan, excuse me, for up to 2.5 months of payroll expenses or $10 million for nonprofits. It is potentially entirely forgivable, meaning it functions as a grant. This will save a lot of organizations, so make sure you get your head around it. And then all 501c3 organizations under 500 employees are eligible. So that's the Paycheck Protection Program. Let's talk about how different types of giving will be affected. Let's start with gifts will benefit positively from the CARES Act. As we mentioned, there's a $300 deduction for all gifts. This does not apply to donor advised funds or private foundations, alongside a $1,200 stimulus, which for many people will not be needed. And so that's a really strong opportunity for cash giving. The maximum deduction, as we said, is now 100% of your income instead of 60%. There won't be a lot of people that are donating 100% of their income, but it's worth noting. And then a key tip here is that as you think about cash gifts, these are not the most powerful gifts you're going to get, even from upper and middle class donors, but you can use this as a time to open up the conversation. So you can share, you can say, can we talk about how the CARES Act affects you, and share this $300 deduction, but also then use it as a lead-in to other types of giving. All right, donor advised funds. These are incredibly important at this moment. Here's why. So we think the gifts going into donor advised funds will decrease. New changes do not apply to money into DAFs. Also, in a down market, there are a few big capital gains, which is the moment when people put money into a donor advised fund. Now, on the flip side, there will be a sharp increase in money coming out of donor advised funds. We recently spoke to a senior person at one of the big donor advised funds, and what he said is that April, meaning right now, is seeing similar giving rates out of donor advised funds as December, which is typically the peak of the year. So April is the new December, meaning that folks who have donor advised funds are giving in strong quantities right now, and those are the people to talk to. We'll give some tips on that in a second. The other thing to note, and we've alluded to this previously, is that donor advised fund giving is not affected by economic uncertainty in the way that other types of giving may be, because that money is already quote unquote gone, meaning it is set aside from a donor's other accounts, and they can no longer use it for themselves. So it's money that has to be allocated to charity, and this is the moment to do so. But how do we make the most of it? There's a key point here. One is that everyone who's already given to you out of a DAF, you should be calling those people this week and next week. You want to ask major gift prospects if they have one. And the way to do that softly is say, many of our supporters give out of a donor advised fund. Would you like more information on gifts from a DAF? And that way they say, no, I don't have one. Or they can say, yes, I do, without asking, hey, do you have a donor advised fund? And then lastly, we talked a little bit about surveys last week. You want to include this in every survey so that you can surface new folks who might have a donor advised fund. When you're having the donor advised fund conversation, here's a key talking point and an objection that you're going to get from donors, and then how to get around that objection. So you might say, I see that you've given out of a donor advised fund before. Is that something you'd be open to doing again? And now a savvy donor might say this. Well, maybe, but I was thinking about waiting until the market recovered to have an even bigger impact and be able to give more. As a donor, I'd rather give $10,000 than $8,000. It makes me feel more special. It may have more of an impact. Totally understandable. That makes sense. And the way to get around this objection is to say this. I understand that instinct. I should let you know that given the current situation, 80 cents today is more valuable than $1 tomorrow, so that we can immediately do X. And X might be keep our staff on board, or move quickly to remote learning, or do whatever other urgent thing you have to do. But you have to frame it in saying, great, we understand that model, but 80 cents is more valuable than later. All right, stock gifts. So stock gifts, and most people don't know this. And by most people, I mean even sophisticated donors and sophisticated gift officers, that stocks can be powerful even in a down market. You know, a lot of the news talks about how people bought, or excuse me, a lot of the news talks about how the market is down 35% from its peak in February. Remember that most people did not buy stocks at that exact moment in February when things were higher. And almost everybody, of all the assets they have, will have at least one or two or multiple that are appreciated. And an individual can donate stock without changing her portfolio. So the initial reaction might be like, I don't want to sell stock now before it goes back up. But you can say, would you like to do this without changing your portfolio? Here's how. You can donate the stock, and you can immediately buy the same stock with cash. And what you've done from a donor perspective is you've eliminated the capital gains on that stock. You've created a new basis, and this is totally legitimate. It's not a wash sale because you're not selling a gift at a loss. As a reminder, you never want anyone to donate depreciated assets. It's much better for them from a tax perspective to sell them and then just give you the cash. Here are some talking points on how to talk through stock gifts. So you want to say, did you know that gifts of stock can give your family a big tax benefit, even in a down market? And what you're doing here is that you recognize the situation and you're owning the frame that the donor is already in. These gifts can reduce the capital gains you'll pay when the market rebounds without changing your portfolio. So we've said even in a down market, and we've taken away the fear of changing a portfolio. And then we say many of our supporters choose to take advantage of this especially smart way to give. And this idea of taking advantage casts this as a particularly savvy way to give that savvy investors or wealthier folks will be really drawn to. And so we'll share this after, but feel free to use these key points as a way to get stock gifts. We'll talk in a moment after we go through QCDs about why stocks and QCDs are especially important and preferable to cash at almost all times. QCDs. So many of you are up to speed on QCDs. We work with a lot of you on this. But as a reminder, a QCD is a gift directly out of an IRA. In normal years, it reduces your income, and so it's valuable whether or not you're itemizing deductions. QCDs have grown almost 3 times their size since 2017 due to tax changes and demographics. And then the CARES Act, though, eliminates RMDs, or required minimum distributions, which is the money people must take out of their IRA for all of 2020. But QCDs are still an excellent giving option, and a lot of people miss this. So I'm going to walk you through it so that you can make sure to use this for your organization. So first things first, don't assume that IRAs have gone down much, even if your 40 and your 401k has dropped a bit. And this is because older folks are more invested in bonds, which are more stable than stocks. As you get older, your investment portfolio changes and you become much more conservative in your approach, which means moving more towards bonds. Building the habits of QCDs and giving QCDs is hugely helpful. So we've seen enormous giving this year, or rather 2019, from people that gave QCDs in 2018, and you want to keep that recurring annual gift so it becomes a habit. It's also the case that giving a QCD is still better than cash for the donor, even without an RMD, as that money is future taxable, meaning that if you give it now, you won't have to pay income tax on that in the future, whereas cash is post-tax money that is more valuable for a donor to keep him or herself. And then this is a point that I want to drive home because a lot of people miss it, but it is one of the single best ways to supercharge your fundraising, is that you don't really want to be asking for cash whenever possible, because people mentally compartmentalize cash and wealth in different segments. Dr. Russell James has done a lot of excellent research on this, where if you actually tell somebody about, or if you prompt someone to think about how much money is in their wallet, and then they go into a grocery store, versus prompting them to think about what's in their bank account and what stocks and IRAs they own, they go into the same grocery store, they'll spend 35% more. And that's because people think of one bucket as the income I have this week. Oh, can I afford to give you $100 out of the $500 in discretionary spending for the month? Or can I afford to give you $1,000 out of $300,000 I have in my retirement account? And people anchor it differently. And so the same donor will give you a significantly larger gift if you're getting stocks or QCDs or similar. And the research from Dr. James showed that the organizations that really pushed stocks and other non-cash assets grew 55% more over a certain period than folks that just focused on cash. So if you take only one thing away, think about how do we make sure to ask for stocks and QCDs even in a down market. So I wanted to walk you through this email template that my colleagues Danielle and Simone and I developed over the weekend around how to market with the CARES Act. And so I'm just going to walk you through this as an example. This is already in the email templates on our resources page, but this should be a big help to you, and feel free again to just use this text or obviously make it your own. So sample language, this is not a real organization, but we wrote, how are you doing, Mark? I'm currently working at my kitchen table next to my spouse. It was about 50 phone calls a day. It turns out, he says, let's circle back on this a lot. And this is a reminder of something we've talked about every week. Be a human, connect with folks on a one-to-one level, even if you're representing a massive institution. It's a little cramped in our home. Sometimes it's very loud and definitely not ideal, but we're able to head out for walks at the local preserve most days, and that's keeping us happy. This is a land trust. I wanted to reach out on behalf of the land trust to share some key changes for the 2020 tax filing year that may be beneficial to you. So this email is providing information as a service. The Congress has passed the CARES Act, et cetera. We share a little bit about the checks for individuals. We share, number 2, about the additional income tax deduction that I talked to you about. And then we said 3, no RMDs from your IRA, but QCDs are still a smarter way to give. And we explain this a little bit because most of you, this might be new for, it is almost certainly new to almost all of your donors. And so this is a really beneficial way to do it. This provides a clear pathway that serves as an educational element. And so you're putting a donor in a really thoughtful, welcoming space because you're promising content that will help make their lives better. Again, we recommend putting your actual email address and signing this as a human as well. Carlos asked, where can we find the template? We'll send out our resources page that Simone just pasted in after the fact as well. So this is really helpful. And we can add some of the example stock language as well, says Jennifer. So just as a recap quickly, what's available to you already, feel free to use this. It's already been wildly successful for a lot of folks. New calendar templates, what we call the triple option email, outreach to major donors, newsletter inserts, virtual events, resilience email, take a look at that, it's great. Video email, what we call the open door email, which we walked through last week, and now the CARES Act email. So these are all free for you, no need for attribution or anything else. Feel free to copy them, change them, whatever you like. We hope that you find them really helpful. And then lastly, as we've talked about a little bit, what this moment also means is that bequests are through the roof. For us, they're 6 times higher on FreeWill compared to the same time last year. Here's just what it looks like for one nonprofit. In the last 2 weeks of February, they got 4 bequests totaling 220K, which is not bad. And that's a strong few weeks for most organizations. In the last 2 weeks ending April 3rd, which is when I put this presentation together, they had 21 gifts totaling 4.3 million. So you can see this giant level up in terms of the appetite for plan giving and for estate planning that is really driving a ton of plan giving right now. And this might be the most successful year of your lives. Here's what it looks like from a graph standpoint. You can see what March is, and you can see what April is projected. That's when we take basically a day by day. Obviously, April is only just beginning, but you can see we're expecting about 3,500 planned gifts through the site this week. If you, by the way, if you want to talk at some point about how to be featured on our public site, feel free to just note that in the survey. Okay, a lot of you had asked about, you've been here, you are into plan giving, you have a sense that this is definitely really important, and your boss is saying, no, let's not do that right now. So, or they're saying, we're taking away the plan giving budget and we're doing X, Y, or Z. So what we did, and I'm gonna shift a bit for a moment, is we put together the strategy memo for you that I'm not going to go through slide by slide because I don't want to take that much time right now. But this is available as a PDF or a PowerPoint for you to download. And what it is just sort of an overall sense of the market and some analysis and data that we've pulled to help make the case for you. So let me scroll through this pretty quickly. But it talks about, well, first quote, just to put everyone in the right space. It talks about the great wealth transfer and 10,000 people turning 73 every day, and the fact that this group of people is going to transfer $68 trillion over the next 30 years. We share the incredible increase that folks have been seeing in estate planning. We talk about what other nonprofits are doing based on survey data that you guys have supported and provided, so thank you for that. We share some anecdotes about people who are seeing the best plan giving conversations of their life. We show the ROI for different plan gifts and different types of giving. So plan giving compared to events or lotteries or direct mail. Some more anecdotes from development directors, and then the effect that plan giving has on real-time giving as well, so that it has a real-time effect on top of everything else. I'm just walking you through that very quickly, not to make the case to you all, because most of you are on board already, but to show you that that deck is also available to you on the resources page. Again, feel free to use it, no need for credit. If you are a consultant or work at a different firm, feel free to take it, put your own logo on it, whatever you need, just to make sure that you guys can keep doing your work. So that should be pretty useful to you, I hope. And if you have any suggestions, feel free to just shoot me an email, and we can always update that in real time. And any other data or any other anecdotes that you're seeing are always helpful as a community to help make the case for this stuff. I also want to share one new idea that we've had at FreeWill and have developed over the last week or so and really put into practice pretty quickly. Because one of the things that we've decided or that we've seen from you all is the biggest risk, frankly, to a lot of your fundraising programs this year isn't lower donor responses. It's what we call decision paralysis, where you don't actually know what to do next. And so suddenly you scale back to a degree that even in a normal world, you'd miss your goals pretty dramatically if you're only asking a third as much as you might in a normal time. So pulse check, by the way, because a couple hundred folks on the phone are already FreeWill partners, this will be free to FreeWill partners for the rest of your term. And then I'm also sharing this as an idea for other folks who might want to replicate something like this in-house. So the overall goal is that in the fastest moving year of our lives, you want to understand exactly where your donor and supporter base is at all times, so you can deliver the most effective messages, be appropriate, be thoughtful, and be kind. And the way we think about doing this is doing custom outreach, plus collecting data, plus using artificial intelligence to understand the language trends. And then that can provide real-time insight on emotions, trends, readiness to donate, what messages might be most effective, what risk of backlash, et cetera, and then turn that into strategic recommendations so that people can charge ahead, but in exactly the right way. A couple of just quick snapshots of what that looks like. So different questions customized to the donor base, things like, are you homeschooling children? What areas of your life have been most affected? So that then you can speak back to this in the conversations and in the mass marketing that you're doing. And then we can break that down by readiness scores for people that are willing to donate or have other impact based on age and gender. So in this case, what you see is that actually folks who are in their 20s and 30s are actually a little bit overwhelmed right now. But the older folks who we've all been worried about are actually just staying at home and really amped to do something, which might not have been obvious. A little bit more, this is just a quick screenshot of who's ready to be asked, how donors are feeling, what they're looking for, what it means for different parts of the country. So it may be that right now in Louisiana, you actually don't want to talk to folks because they're so busy. But in the Great Lakes region, where things are going much better, that's an avenue where you can start having conversations immediately. And so getting a sense of the regional differences is really key for those of you at larger nonprofits that have a supporter base around the country or around the world. So talk to your strategist to make this happen, and we'll go from there for partners. Great. I wanted to spend actually more time than usual on the ideas that the community has, because we've seen some really amazing stuff this week. So ideas from the community. MakeAWish, they're adding a $300 giving option on all of their donation pages. This is an excellent, excellent idea. I would strongly encourage everybody to do this. Great job, Nicole and MakeAWish. Grinnell, I love this. They're working on a video where the mascot does all the smart decisions in the time of COVID, walking a dog and being outside, keeping a social distance, using Zoom to talk with the dean. This is a great idea from Grinnell. Just awesome job. I'm sharing this mostly because it's great news. So the Peggy Adams Animal Rescue League and Kim said that they're pushing adoption and fostering hard, and March was the second best March in a 95-year history for adoptions, which is just awesome to see and how people are stepping up. And then this is actually linked when you download the forms in the PDF, but Maverick's making a difference. So at Mercy College, they're highlighting the different roles that their students are playing. So even though a college might be working remotely, might not feel immediately involved in the crisis, it's highlighting the role that they played in educating people that are on the front lines right now. Really, really cool if you're an education institution. I see we have some other Grinnell alumni in the chat. Tammy from St. Joe's Academy says, we've been making more phone calls without an ask and people are donating without the ask. So just connecting, this really shows that folks are ready to donate and make some actions there. We've seen more frequent emails to donors, many with video, much more posting on social media from Marian Fathers, which is a Catholic organization. And then I love this from the Barrington Stage Company, which is a theater organization. We're planning donor cocktail parties and opening nights. Maybe we'll mail invitations, have themes. send cocktail recipes, etc. That's really cool. I really like this, again, from Marian Fathers. So this is a screenshot of a video they sent out. But what they did, and maybe you can see this right above the play button, is they sent an image of Jesus, in this case, to be placed on the front door. And they shared a lot about the symbolism and the role there. Obviously, religious imagery is different by faith group. It's also different based on the organization you're running. But you might think of other, either a quote from the founder, a picture of the college, whatever it might be, some image that people can print out while they're at their home. And what you do want to do is just create a basic form that allows people to download it. And then you can follow up with those folks who now have this constant reminder of your organization in their home. I love this, by the way. So this is my colleague, Jack, who is brilliant at FreeWill. And what he did, and this is a video of him announcing our FreeWill talent show. So this is not a fundraising event, it's just a team building thing. But we'll all be on Zoom and we'll all do something, or many of us will do something. I'm gonna play piano, which I've been learning for about 8 months and it's still terrible, but it's a pretty forgiving audience. And what we're gonna do is just go 2-3 minutes on sharing talent and taking over the Zoom for a minute and doing that. I assume people will be drinking wine or beer wherever they are, or tea. But if you're a college, if you're an organization, you could have a fundraising talent show with actually relatively little work, because people are so excited to help. They're so excited to do things from their own home. And I'm sure that if you've got an email list of more than a few thousand, you're going to get 5, 6, 10, maybe 20 acts of people that want to play instruments or tell jokes or read a poem. Really great community building, relatively low lift, and a huge way to step up. And you can intersperse that with different people asking for funds or showcasing the work that you're doing, etc. Love this. That was all Jack. Had just showed up one day. So Jack, my colleague Nicole, and some other folks are working on it, and I'm so excited. I'll let you know how it goes. It's on April 23rd for us. The SPCA in Tampa Bay is planning a virtual pet walk on 4/18. They're still figuring this out, but that's really fun. So you can basically have people sign up for a same time pet walk. And then Save the Redwoods has been doing just extraordinary work. And they said our Marcom team, which is marketing and communications, has gone to overdrive. My favorite so far is the Redwoods Minute as part of a weekly Redwoods Recharge email. And what this is it's a video, I'm going to show you this in a moment, of just peaceful minute in the Redwoods, which is a great example of meeting donors where they're at. You might think the Redwoods have nothing to do with COVID-19, and that's true, but it's addressing the anxiety that people are feeling, and it's providing this great service. I have no idea if this is going to work, actually, but I'm going to try to show you this video, and let's see if it does. We'll see how the sound goes. But let's do 20 seconds on this and just sort of sit and take it in. All right, so you can see what that looks like. That is existing footage I already have. I'm sure that a lot of your organizations, not just environmental, but it could be like a peaceful moment from campus or your school or wherever you may be. If you have some place or imagery of the museum, etc., this sort of thing to bring happiness and joy is incredibly compelling. And I promise you that people will remember to Save the Redwoods for a long time based on helping folks get through this. They also feel obviously much closer to the organization based on that. Okay, so those are ideas from the community. And then doubling down on community, we had a higher ed roundtable last week. We had a great roundtable for K through 12 yesterday that got rave reviews. So we're doing some of these again. Next Wednesday, there's a higher ed roundtable on 1 p.m. K through 12 yesterday. We'll place the video and stay tuned for another one there. There's one on animal organizations that already has a ton of people coming on Thursday. Environment on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. Churches on Thursday, April 9th. Health on tomorrow at 2:30. Arts and culture at noon. These are all Eastern. Sorry to be a little New York centric. You can sign up for these in the survey. We'll send you an invite. They're just a really great time to talk to a couple of experts, but then have community space to solve problems together. So Simone just posted the link to sign up for that. And people have loved them. So, there are a dozen ideas that we didn't get to share because there were just too many. Some great stuff from the Highline organization, a few others as well. American Cancer Society had a cool survey that went to estate planners. We'll share more of those in the weeks to come. If you have other ideas you want to share, send them to me. We'll feature them next week, but also bring them to the roundtable, and you can really dive in on the particular challenges that your organizations are facing. All right, so quick summary of today. The CARES Act opens all sorts of new opportunities for different types of giving. It also provides a great way to engage. There is an extraordinarily strong case for continuing to fundraise. Use that deck. Let us know how it works. If you have any feedback, we can make changes, but we'd love to hear from you about that. There's endless community in this, endless creativity in this community. So keep sharing stuff. We'll feature it as much as we can, but really just blown away and loved getting the ideas from everybody and being able to reflect that back. And then, as I think you're getting the hang of, we can really do this. People are really coming through strong. We're seeing organizations be more nimble than they've been in the past. They're making the most of this opportunity, and I'm really excited for you all. So next steps, please fill out the survey. Some webinars cost $150. This isn't free, but if you fill out the survey, it will make it better, not just for yourself, but for everybody else next week and beyond. We'll continue to do this. We originally planned on doing 5 based on overwhelming response and how helpful people are saying it. There's still a rapidly moving situation, so we'll continue to do these for the next few weeks to help you navigate this. I hope it's been helpful so far. And then lastly, our team is here for you. If you need anything at all, note it in the survey or email me. One of the questions in there is, what's the single most important thing we could do to help you right now? And we love reading that. And then we just have our really wonderful and smart team that puts our heads together starting on Tuesday afternoons to figure out what will be most helpful in the week ahead. So please do that. And there's a bunch of questions. So feel free to pop those in the Q&A, not in the chat. The chat sort of moves so quickly that we lose those, but my colleague Nicole, my colleague Simone are helping to navigate the Q&A. So we'll go through a few of these, but if you have to hop off, I just wanted to say thank you for coming. It's really a joy to be here with you. And yeah, good luck with everything. But if you want to stick around, we'll go through, it's only 12:40, so 10, 15 minutes of questions. First question, any recommendations for how to stay focused during the day? Yes. Block off 20 minutes where all you do is worry and read the news and fret about things, and then stop. Take 5 minutes, send kind, thoughtful notes to other people, and start doing stuff. So if you're worried, actually lean into the worry and get it over with, and then come back. Someone asked about making the jump to connecting well with donors on the phone and through Zoom. I think it takes different skills than in person. Definitely. A couple things you want to do is make sure you have a good setup. What you can see now is that my screen is basically at eye level. What you can't see is that there's an Amazon box and then 2 books stacking it up here, which is much different than if I'm looking like this and it doesn't feel like a normal conversation. Make sure you're well lit, and then also just share the fact that it's a little bit awkward. You can name that I'd really much rather be sitting across the table from you, but we're going to make the most of this together. This is a great question. How do we get started on major gifts if we've relied heavily on events? What I would do is call the people who have traditionally come to the events and say, we would have loved to have you at the event, and we were going to share a lot of information about what organization X was doing. Would you mind if we shared on that now? And so you name that you can't do the event anymore. You use it as a reason to call and give the updates that the donor would normally get at the event. And then at the end, you can say, normally this would be the case. Instead, let's just ask, if you don't mind, a ticket would normally be X amount. Is there a chance you can donate that this year as well? Our leadership is in a state of semi-denial about the severity of the situation and how long it will go on. How can we communicate to them in a way that is impactful and affects real change? Your leadership, as someone who runs an organization, your leadership is probably dealing with a lot of stress outside of work. And this feels overwhelming. And frankly, they might say, this is not what I signed up for. the best way to help folks who are currently in this state of paralysis we talked about earlier is to share what other organizations are doing and shift them from a place of feeling stuck and scared into moments of opportunity. And social proof is really key there. So I would think about what are the closest organizations to you. Either, let's say it's a diocese in a neighboring town, a land trust in a different state, a different college, et cetera, and then highlight what they're doing as a way to make it seem normal and common. This is a great question. FreeWill has focused a lot of time on email and online messaging, but our organization only has a fraction of emails on file compared to home addresses. Our donor demographic has historically been more easily reachable through snail mail. Right now that's posing an issue. What are some online messaging campaigns that you've found work well specifically for older sets of donors? So let me answer this a little bit different way, is that if you have home addresses, you can probably reach people by telephone through the old-fashioned white pages if you don't have phone numbers. And you can call folks, and then you can follow up with more information by asking for their email. So you can actually use this as a moment to keep building your database. I assume that you've got a lot of folks who are not doing visits, not doing other work right now. This is a great thing for them to do. And most people will be more than willing to give their email if it's in response to more information about something. Online message campaigns, people dramatically underestimate the use of Facebook by older folks. Baby boomers are the fastest growing portion on Facebook, and much more so than millennials or Gen Z. And so good content, clear pictures, video, even informally, will be really well received. And you can even do things like, tag a bunch of donors or other folks that have, that have recently helped out in the comments and getting them sharing it as well. Can we understand why April is the new December for donor advised funds? What I meant by that is that giving rates this April are equivalent to giving rates in December in previous years for donor advised funds, meaning that donor advised funds are really giving at strong rates right now. And so when I say April is the new December, what I mean is that April is seeing similar giving rates as previous Decembers. Someone says, I work from home with 2 young kids who interrupted me during phone calls. Is it okay to warn donors that I'm a mom working from home right now? 100%. You should embrace it. And donors are incredibly forgiving and supportive. And I think will be much more sympathetic to you knowing that you're calling them despite the fact that you've got 2 kids who want your attention. And so what you've seen in the email templates and the phone scripts is don't treat this as something that you have to overcome. Lean into it as a way to really connect with folks. And, frankly, for folks that aren't homeschooling kids, I think a lot of us recognize how easy we have it compared to the folks that are, and it will make them even more willing to help. What about encouraging QCDs to be given sooner now versus year end? This is a great idea. So there's an upcoming new Giving Tuesday happening, I believe in May. I can double check on the dates there. But you can go back and say, you've given this in the past year in November, but we're starting an emergency fund or we're doing it for this reason, we have urgency. Would you consider giving earlier this year? And a lot of donors seem very receptive to that. Is the 6 times higher in bequests year over year attributed in part to FreeWill having greater number of clients, not some of the interest is increased? That is a great question. It's probably a small portion, but even compared to February, March, and April are dramatically higher. So a huge portion of that is due to different behavior by donors and not necessarily more clients signing up with FreeWill. Will the roundtable be a video Zoom meeting style where we can all see each other? Yes, with the exception of higher ed, I believe, where there's so many signups that your meetings get capped at 100. And in order to avoid excluding people, we have to switch to webinar format, which is more like what you see here. Please explain the significance of the $300 option from MakeAWish. What that means is that there's a new $300 donation or deduction available to folks. So for many people, if you're not itemizing deductions, which at least last year, 91% of Americans did not itemize deductions, now everybody can still deduct up to $300 in a gift, which is why MakeAWish has that number. The idea is that instead of someone giving 200, they might go all the way up to 300. I don't know that you'll see people who are going to give 350 go down to 300, but it's something that we'll have to keep an eye on. Giving Tuesday, by the way, is May 5th. Thank you, Sam, for calling that out in the chat. Would you be able to do something on budgeting and finances? Definitely worth considering. Most of the folks on this conversation are gift officers or heads of development in charge of raising money instead of not spending it. But I would go check out the guide that Jenny made that we've shared. There's also another resource in that guide on how to ask for rent abatement from landlords, which can save folks a lot of money. So start there. Rent and people are your biggest expenses for almost everybody. Obviously, some social services aside. So take a look at that. And if you have other questions, email me. We can certainly think about including it in a future week. Were you going to talk about the stimulus checks that people are getting and how these relate to fundraising? I think this is still up in the air, and would love to know what you think, either in this survey or the next one. It is risk. Someone else had asked about how to be appropriate while asking about stimulus checks. What I think you want to do is really focus on understanding the timing of when those checks hit and being around then. So you might want to think about increasing your marketing now and naming that thing where you can tell people that a check is coming, but not necessarily asking for it. And that may be a strong avenue because people can make the connection on their own. 2 more questions. Is it appropriate to send cards and notes to donors in the mail? Is it safe? How is it received? We've heard people being thrilled to get mail. The CDC and others have seen no cases of infection through the mail. You still want to be careful when you're going outside, but that is a big, an easy one. Definitely keep sending mail. Definitely keep reaching out to donors. If anything, we're seeing less commercial mail. So restaurants, travel agents, et cetera, are sending less mail. So it's more likely to be seen. And frankly, I think people are reading their mail more closely because they have time at home. One last question is, how do you make the case for both an SBA loan and an emergency fund? Those are different. And so when you talk to donors, you just talk about the emergency fund. And then internally, you want to make an SBA loan request as well. So don't think of those as either or, but one is going directly to the government. You don't have to announce it anywhere. And the other is going to your donors, and you can make a big case around that. So the SBA loan, I don't think you want to publicize it, but it should be really helpful. I don't believe that we have any more questions. So let me take a quick look, and then we can all go back to work. All right, well, let me just wrap up saying a huge thank you to folks that joined again. It's really, I think, special for our team to be able to be here and supportive with you all. And frankly, I think it takes away a lot of our anxiety to have things to do to help out and be as useful as possible. For those of you that are FreeWill partners, feel free to talk to your strategist and ask for anything we can do to help, including the pulse check. For everyone else, also, there's a point in the survey that says, what is the most valuable thing we can do right now? And we've got a bunch of really wonderful, smart folks who are, many of them are not raising kids at home right now, so we have a little bit of extra time and would love to be as helpful as possible to you. So thank you again. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Please fill out the survey, and that's it. Let us know if we can do anything to help, but have a wonderful week.